Hi everybody, welcome back to the SDG Media Zone, live from the United Nations headquarters during HLPF 2026. My name is Cherisse Bovell and I'm a Trinbagonian international development practitioner and researcher currently working with the United Nations Foundation, Our Future Agenda program, with young people who are really advocating for intergenerational cooperation and our voice at the table in the rooms that matter the most. Today, we are here to talk about a really pressing topic, and that is AI and energy security. Because as we know, when emerging technologies rise, so do problems, as we're seeing right now today with the data centers requiring immense amount of energy to cool them, resulting in community displacement and also really limiting access to clean water. And also young people who are facing anxiety over less and less jobs and more anxiety over a higher cost of living. Right? So I'm really happy to be here today, and I'm welcoming such amazing guests, which I will turn over to right now. First, we have Mr. Alexander de Croo, who is the former Prime Minister of Belgium and current administrator of the United Nations Development Program. Amazing. And I'll turn over to Ms. Damilola Ogunbiyi. It's really lovely to be here with you today as well, the Special Representative for the Secretary General for Sustainable Energy for All. Thank you so much for being with us today. I'm really looking forward to this, what I know to be insightful conversation. So this is a very loaded discussion, and I think because of that, we should just dive right in. Sure. So I'm going to direct my first question to you, Mr. de Croo. We're now seeing AI drive huge new demands for energy, and in our current economic system, we really run the risk of investments flowing to the already profitable data centers. So when there's 655 million people who still lack electricity, I'm wondering, what do you think that the international community can do to ensure that these investments are channeled into those who need it the most, those who need AI, those who need digitalization and clean energy?
Yeah, energy and AI are closely linked, as you said. The way we try to use it, and really the vision that we have, is that AI is a great enabler in bringing energy and electricity to the people who today do not have it. And decentralized energy systems are an incredible opportunity in bringing electricity to those places that historically have been very difficult because they're remote, often because they're in very fragile environments. And so the combination of decentralized mini grids, renewables, storage, demand management is a great opportunity of bringing finally, after so many decades, that electricity to people who need it. AI is an incredible tool in doing the right analysis, in really understanding, okay, where are really the needs, what type of infrastructure do we need, what type of model is necessary for those grids to finally become what we call smart grids. And there's been a lot of talk about the smart grids, but to make them smart, you need human intelligence, but you also need some artificial intelligence to be added to that. So we see the potential downside of AI taking away investment that could have gone to bringing electricity to those who have never had it. But the upside is also a huge one, and we really want to focus on the upside and how you can use that technology to finally have those breakthroughs. And all the puzzles are actually, all the pieces of the puzzle are really on the table today.
That makes a lot of sense, and I appreciate you walking me through that so comprehensively. And it makes me think of a follow-up question. As you know, the SDG7 review is happening this year. And I'm wondering now, in this very uncertain geopolitical climate, how do you think that's going to inform the future of sustainable development?
I think the business case for sustainable energy has never been clearer than now. On two dimensions. One is just pure cost. Today, the combination of solar panels and storage, and battery, is cheaper than fossil fuel. So the business case is clear cut. And the geopolitical element. I mean, many countries we work with are fed up with being the punching ball of what is being decided on the other side of the world, because the impact of what is happening in the Gulf today is, yes, it is in the Gulf, but it's mostly in sub-Saharan Africa, it's in Southeast Asia. I mean, they are really taking the punches for that. So the case has never been clearer, and there's a gigantic amount of interest in finally getting those investments. Now, a lot of that is private investment because it's actually commercially viable, but to create environment to make it happen, some policy reforms, some de-risking needs to happen, and that is where UN organizations can play an important role.
Exactly. I think that's an excellent point about how UN organizations can really mobilize and have that incredible impact. Ms. Ogunbiyi, if I could really pass over to you, because I have a few things that I'm curious about. You have had such a robust career, and you've spearheaded so many initiatives that people have really been able to feel. So I can think of no one better to ask about the progress that we've seen thus far. So I'd appreciate if you can give us a bit of a snapshot of that progress and how you think the energy crisis today is going to affect that progress, positively or negatively.
I think it's important to note that from 2015, we've electrified 92% of the world's population. It's this 8% that is the issue. 655 million people, of which about 560 million people reside in sub-Saharan Africa. And that's why Administrator Croo, a lot of the programs, even UNDP, are championing on ground with the mini-grids, with the decentralized renewable energy, are critical to reach those people, because as the UN system, we really believe in leaving no one behind. I also think that when we talk about energy, we are very fixated on electrification or electricity, and we don't talk enough about clean cooking. There's still 2 billion people that have no access to clean cooking. And in my continent, 970 million of them reside. This is one of the direct effects of climate, gender, health issues all wrapped up in one. So some of the things we've been looking at and using tools is that how do you do electrification and clean cooking at the same time? I had experience on ground in Africa running the largest energy access program in my home country, Nigeria, where because of decentralized energy solutions and the cheap cost for solar and storage, we were able to connect 8 million people in 12 months. That almost seems unheard of. But now what we're trying to do as a full UN system and through UN Energy, which we both co-chair, is like, how do we scale that up? How is that, 8 million going to be 300 million with the World Bank and AFDB, and how are we going to reach other people? So back to what Administrator Croo said, is this is where we use AI in a good way. This is where we use modeling to say, what is the least cost way of getting to those people? Not to give them the minimum amount of energy, not to give them like a solar lantern, but to help them grow in the pathway of energy as well. What is enough energy to live a dignified life? Is that 4 light bulbs, a fridge, a connection to internet? How does that really work? And then one of the more critical things that we're looking at as a UN system is, how do we power productive uses? I'm not sure about you, but I've been to thousands of communities, and they keep on telling us, can you power where I work? Because that's where I am for 16, 20 hours, either in an agricultural space in some type of productive use. I'll figure out my home. And that's another rethinking of how we've been empowering people. We've been fixated about household electrification. But really, if you power where somebody works, that is an economic growth story. And then they can live a better, dignified life. So lifting people out of poverty with energy is important. Energy is not the goal. Energy is the enabler. And I think that's how we've been thinking a little bit more as a UN system, and that's how we've been putting plans together and really kind of collaborating a lot more, understanding that organizations at UNDP are face on ground to get these things implemented, but how do we enable each other to make sure we really leave no one behind?
That's so amazing, and I think that you explained that so well for both myself and the audience. And you really take on an intersectional lens when analyzing this issue, which I think is quite helpful in assisting all of our understanding of the complexity of all of the critical global issues that we're facing today. And you made a point about AI and how we can use that to achieve our collective goals. And I'm wondering if maybe you can dig a little bit more into that and speak to how we can use this technology both in poorer countries who have limited access to resources and a lot of structural constraints, and then wealthier countries who already have that access to privilege.
So one of the competitive advantages of the whole UN system is our, not just our convening power, but how we're seen politically on ground. We have access to the highest level of government, and we don't take that for granted. We see it as a privilege, but that's because we also perform. So a lot of places where money just isn't spent is on the policy and the regulatory. And I think that's where the data modeling comes in. I'm an engineer, so everything I do, I want to get built. But if you think about it, 10 years ago, I could not predict accurately a pathway of a family of 4, how they are going to go on the energy ladder for 20 years. Now you can actually predict that and say, what is the best technology you give them now? When are you going to come back and upgrade that system in 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, which greatly reduces the cost, because you're not giving them the 20-year solution in year 1, which is very expensive in a time where we don't have enough money. You're subsidizing what they need now, and they're looking at how they grow economically to be able to sustain themselves. So you're not coming back to subsidize. I think that is what has been important in terms of embracing the technology. I would say, just like the administrator, it's not that AI is perfect. There are still issues with these data centers, how much energy they use, how much water they use. And as a UN system, we're not letting go of that because we want to utilize AI. We still think we need to hold AI companies accountable. But we also have to look at, okay, so if you're providing data centers in a place where there's really cheap, energy supply, how can that benefit the community in a different way? I think sometimes when we are in the global north, we just think about global north problems. But when you go down to the developing countries, they just want solutions. And we're here to try and provide the most cost-effective solution, the least economic growth that gets you out of this cycle of subsidy and aid, instead of just providing something from now that might not be sustainable.
Thank you so much. That was, like I said before, a really comprehensive analysis and overview. And like I said, I'm just learning so much from both of you here today. And just to wrap up, I would love to ask you both a shared question, because I think you both have different lenses that you can see these issues through. So how do you think that governments can take maximum advantage of these new technologies to boost clean energy access and transition, but avoiding the pitfalls and the negative impacts?
Well, I think that energy security is part of security. And many governments these days have security very high on their agenda. Now, we see the consequences of energy insecurity. What has happened in the Gulf region has ripple effects worldwide. Now, there was a huge risk that tens of millions of people would be pushed back into poverty. What have governments done to avoid that? They came up with subsidies, and very often these are blanket subsidies, incredibly expensive. So yes, they have covered the risk, but at which cost? I mean, the fossil fuel subsidies have increased with more than $400 million. That's 400 million that could have been used for something else, right? And that is just the direct link between security and taking care of your people. If those countries would have access to renewables and decentralized grids and all these things that we talked about, those 400 million, they could have been used to invest in education. They could have been used to invest in healthcare. They could have been used to invest in so many things that actually would have moved the world forward. This crisis, gigantic amount of money has been used to just try to mitigate what has happened. So that element of energy security and security in a broader sense, and using money for what it really should be used, that's just one agenda. So the case for rollout of renewables and of all those intelligent energy systems has never been stronger than today. And to do that, I think that very often UN organizations have, and the advocacy level and the local presence to be able to integrate all that, because energy is bringing together a lot of different actors, and our local presence is very instrumental in that.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ogunbiyi.
I think just to buttress on the point, we also understand the complexities. we understand the energy transition is going to be different in every single country. So we don't come and have, this is the template for energy transition, and come and implement it. No, you take the nuances. I come from a country like Nigeria. The transition in the southern Nigeria is going to be different from the northern Nigeria. And you have to really understand that when you say implement renewables. But what we are also showing you, it is the most cost-effective way in a time where there's limited resources. And when you install these systems, it's once, right? You're not coming back, to look for new ways of, fuel, which is keeping people, unfortunately, in poverty in a lot of countries. So again, it's going with the data and the evidence, explaining it, but also understanding what does government want to see? How do they think of their industrialization? Just because we're saying you don't have enough people, you haven't connected enough people to energy access, doesn't mean you don't have industrialization goals. Doesn't mean you don't have green value chain. Doesn't mean you don't have a youth energy program. So I think what we do very well as a UN system is bring that all together and then make it in a palatable way so it can become a whole of government policy, not just an energy policy. Energy is one of the things that it has to be whole of government unless it doesn't work. And try to break down that silo when we talk about energy. It's about prosperity, it's about people at the end of the day. And if you don't put people at the heart of the energy transition, it just won't work.
It just won't work, and I think that that's a really good way to close off. Thank you both so much for giving me such food for thought, and the audience as well. And in this very current and critical place in time, I think that this has been a really helpful conversation for myself and everybody tuning in. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.